it gets to a place where it does need to try to circumvent sanctions. But there seems to be more proof of help on the other side. We have seen reporting, from our colleague Mackenzie Sigalos about the millions of dollars of donations.
The global financial system, as we know, it is changing faster than anyone expected. For decades, the US dollar has been the backbone of global trade. Oil, gold, imports, exports, everything flowed through dollar rails. But here's what most people miss. That dominance wasn't just about the dollar itself. It was about the infrastructure behind it. Systems like SWIFT and chips that allowed banks around the world to move money through American-controlled pipes. Then something happened that exposed the fragility of that system: sanctions. When Russia was cut off from SWIFT after the Ukraine conflict, the world saw, maybe for the first time, that a single decision from Washington could freeze an entire nation's access to the global economy. That was the wake-up call. Countries began to ask, what if this happens to us? China, India, Brazil, and even Saudi Arabia started exploring ways to move value without touching the US dollar system. And quietly, a new race began, not for territory, not for oil, but for monetary independence. That's where XRP and XLM enter the picture. See, these two digital assets were never just random crypto projects. They were built with purpose. Ripple's XRP ledger was designed for instant cross-border settlement, the kind of infrastructure that could replace SWIFT for international payments. Stellar's XLM, on the other hand, was built to move money between people, banks, and digital currencies at near zero cost. Both share one critical trait. They're neutral. They don't belong to any government. They can connect systems that don't trust each other. Exactly what you'd need if you're Russia or China and you want to trade globally without the US dollar in the middle. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most people think crypto adoption will come from Silicon Valley or Wall Street. But what if the real catalyst comes from geopolitics? What if the same friction that divides nations becomes the force that pushes blockchain into the mainstream? Because right now, behind closed doors, that's what's happening. Russia is building its digital ruble, and China's already deep into digital yuan pilots across dozens of cities. But those currencies, CBDCs, can't move freely across borders without an interoperable layer. That's the missing piece, and it's exactly what RippleNet and the Stellar network were designed to solve. Let's say China wants to pay Russia for oil, or Russia wants to settle trade with India or Iran. Do they really want to route that through the US dollar? Of course not. That's why they're exploring alternatives. Settlement bridges that allow instant value transfer, without political friction. And if they choose XRP or XLM as that bridge, the ripple effect, no pun intended, would be massive. We're talking about a complete restructuring of global liquidity, away from a centralized Western model toward a decentralized, digital, multipolar one. But this shift isn't just about finance. It's about power. For the first time, we're seeing countries weaponize payment systems. And at the same time, we're seeing protocols like Stellar and Ripple emerge as neutral grounds, the Switzerland of digital value. Think about it. Ripple doesn't care if it's a US bank or a Chinese one using its rails. Stellar doesn't discriminate between a Nigerian fintech and a European CBDC. They're protocols, not politics. That neutrality is what makes them so powerful and so dangerous to traditional systems built on control. So when people ask, could Russia and China really adopt XRP or XLM? The real question is, why wouldn't they? They already need digital liquidity bridges. They already need systems that can interoperate between CBDCs. And both Ripple and Stellar have already proven their technology works at scale. Now imagine this. Russia integrates XRP for global energy settlements. China uses Stellar to facilitate cross-border digital payments through its Belt and Road Initiative. Suddenly, the US dollar isn't the only game in town. Global transactions start flowing through digital corridors built on blockchain rails, not legacy infrastructure. The result? Money moves faster, cheaper, and beyond the control of any single government. And the assets powering those networks, XRP and XLM, become the digital oil of this new era. Most people won't see it coming. They'll still be watching Bitcoin and Ethereum, waiting for hype cycles. Meanwhile, the real revolution, the infrastructure shift, is happening at the highest geopolitical level. And that's the part that changes everything. Because when nations start using blockchain to bypass SWIFT, it's not just a tech story. It's the end of the old financial world order. This is why analysts, banks, and even international organizations are quietly paying attention. Not because they're excited about crypto prices, but because they see what's at stake: the control of global money flow. And in that new system, neutrality wins, efficiency wins, transparency wins. That's why if Russia and China adopt XRP and XLM, it won't just be a crypto story. It will be the moment the financial world flips forever. When it comes to innovation in money, the East has quietly outpaced the West. While the US still debates regulation and lawsuits, Russia and China are already building the future of digital payments. Fast, programmable, and sovereign. This isn't about crypto speculation. This is about infrastructure. Because while most people are watching charts, these nations are building the rails that will define the next 100 years of global trade. Let's start with China. China's digital yuan, or ECNY, is already live in over 25 cities. It's been tested by millions of users, integrated with public transport systems, major banks, and even global events like the Beijing Winter Olympics. This isn't some experimental coin. It's the world's first fully functional central bank digital currency at scale. But here's the kicker. China's digital yuan isn't just about convenience or modernization. It's about independence from the dollar. By creating its own digital money system, China can bypass SWIFT and control its global transactions without going through US financial networks. Now think about the scale of that. When China trades with African nations or with countries in the Belt and Road Initiative, it doesn't want every transaction to touch New York or London. It wants direct digital settlement, instant, borderless, and sovereign. But there's one problem. While the digital yuan works domestically, it's not naturally interoperable with other digital currencies. It needs a bridge. That's where XRP and XLM come in. Both the RippleNet, XRP, and Stellar Network, XLM, are built for this exact purpose: to serve as neutral bridges between currencies, banks, and ledgers that don't speak the same language. Ripple already has a proven track record with cross-border settlement in Asia, from Japan and the Philippines to Singapore and Thailand. Meanwhile, Stellar has been working with MoneyGram, Circle, USDC, and even Ukraine's digital currency pilot, giving them credibility on both retail and institutional levels. Now imagine China plugging the digital yuan into a network like Stellar or Ripple. It wouldn't need to rely on Western banking rails. Could send and settle value directly in seconds. And that's exactly what worries the West. Now let's look at Russia. After being cut off from SWIFT in 2022, Russia had no choice but to find alternatives. Almost overnight, its economy was forced to adapt, and the Kremlin began fast-tracking its digital ruble project. In 2024, Russia officially launched pilot programs for the digital ruble, allowing select banks and citizens to use it for real transactions. Their goal? Full rollout by 2025. But here's what's more interesting. Russian officials have openly said they're exploring cross-border use cases for the digital ruble in collaboration with China, India, and the UAE. That means one thing: interoperability. And when you talk about interoperability, there are only a handful of blockchain technologies capable of handling it efficiently. XRP and XLM top that list. Ripple's technology already supports institutional-grade liquidity and settlement between fiat currencies. Stellar, with its open access model, allows governments to tokenize their own currencies while still connecting to a global network. In other words, both are plug-and-play solutions for what Russia and China need right now. Here's what that could look like. The digital ruble settles energy exports to China. The digital yuan pays for commodities or tech imports from Russia. Both currencies meet on a neutral settlement layer, a blockchain network using XRP or XLM as a bridge asset. Transactions clear instantly. No SWIFT, no middlemen, no censorship. Now you begin to see the picture. This isn't about one country winning over another. It's about decentralizing power in global finance. For decades, international trade has flowed through Western-controlled systems, giving Washington and European regulators the ability to pressure nations through sanctions or exclusion. But digital currencies, especially when combined with neutral bridges like XRP and XLM, break that control completely. And while the US debates crypto regulation and SEC lawsuits, Russia and China are building They're creating what could become the alternative financial network of the 21st century, a system that still uses blockchain but not necessarily Bitcoin, because Bitcoin isn't efficient for payments. Ethereum isn't scalable for real-time settlement, but XRP and XLM, they were built for this. Both can process thousands of transactions per second. Both have negligible fees. Both can be integrated directly into existing banking infrastructure. And both already comply with ISO 20022, the new global standard for digital payments. So, let's connect the dots. Russia wants independence from SWIFT. China wants independence from the dollar. Both need fast, neutral, programmable money. And both are testing digital currencies that, sooner or later, will need bridges. If those bridges turn out to be XRP and XLM, then we're looking at a massive reconfiguration of global finance. We're talking trillions in trade moving across blockchain-based corridors, powered by digital assets that are right now sitting under a dollar. The question isn't whether this will happen, it's when. Because once these systems go live, there's no going back. The world's liquidity will flow digitally, not politically. And the assets powering that liquidity, the ones you can buy right now on public markets, will be repriced overnight. This is why investors watching Ripple, Stellar, and their growing global partnerships are paying attention. They see the geopolitical chessboard moving. They see the technology being quietly tested. And they know when the East flips the switch, the market will never look the same again. If Russia and China truly adopt XRP and XLM, the global financial landscape would flip overnight. Here's why. Right now, the majority of international trade moves through the US dollar and the SWIFT network. That means every transaction, from oil to semiconductors, passes through Western-controlled systems. But the moment these nations start settling directly through blockchain networks like Ripple and Stellar, they no longer need those middlemen. Money begins to move differently. Instead of taking 3 to 5 days and multiple correspondent banks, payments clear in 3 to 5 seconds, with near-zero fees and full transparency. The old financial rails suddenly look outdated, slow, and overpriced. Let's talk numbers for a second. China's trade volume exceeds $6 trillion annually. Russia's sits near $800 billion. Even if a small percentage of that flow starts moving through XRP and XLM rails, the liquidity demand would skyrocket. And remember, XRP and XLM have fixed supplies. That means the more value moves through these networks, the higher the demand per token. The market doesn't need to guess. The math speaks for itself. For example, if just 5% of China's annual cross-border transactions used XRP for liquidity, that's hundreds of billions of dollars in daily movement. Even if each XRP transaction only required a small fraction of a coin, the total locked liquidity could push the asset's value into entirely new territory. The same goes for XLM, which thrives in retail and fintech corridors. Picture digital yuan payments reaching small businesses in Africa, Latin America, or Eastern Europe, using Stellar as the global connector. Suddenly, Stellar isn't just a blockchain project. It's part of the world's new payment backbone. Now, let's go a little deeper. What happens beyond the technology? Once Russia and China adopt this kind of system, other nations have no choice but to follow. Because money moves at the speed of competition. When one major trading bloc starts saving billions in fees and days in settlement time, every other economy will want the same edge. India joins, the UAE joins, then Saudi Arabia, then Brazil. Before long, you have a global network effect, a new financial internet where XLM and XRP become the default settlement assets. And this is where things get even more interesting. Global liquidity would start to reprice. For decades, the US Treasury market and the dollar have been the base layer of world finance. But if digital trade starts flowing through decentralized rails, then XRP and XLM become digital base layers, the units that oil this new system. That doesn't mean the dollar disappears overnight. It means the monopoly ends. The world finally gets choice. A bank in India could settle with a partner in China in seconds. A logistics company in Africa could receive payment in local currency instantly, without converting through the dollar. All powered by bridge assets that are neutral, programmable, and global. And when that happens, the crypto market won't look the same. Because XRP and XLM aren't meme coins or speculative tokens. They're infrastructure-grade assets, the kind that governments, banks, and corporations build on top of. That's why their real value isn't in hype, it's in utility. Utility that scales with every transaction, every corridor, every new connection added to the network. Now imagine a year after this system goes live. Ripple announces record-breaking global liquidity volumes. Stellar reports millions of new wallets connected through international remittance partners. Major exchanges begin reporting unprecedented institutional demand. And suddenly, the same retail investors who sold during the lawsuit or the bear market are scrambling to get back in, at prices they once thought were impossible. That's how FOMO flips. It doesn't start when the price moves. It starts when the world finally realizes what's been building in plain sight. So, what would really happen if Russia and China adopted XRP and XLM? A complete reordering of global finance. The end of monopoly money control. The rise of neutral, decentralized, programmable value systems. And most importantly, the assets that built those systems would no longer be measured in cents. They'd be measured in impact, in liquidity, in necessity. That's what mass adoption looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's inevitable. If Russia and China truly go all in on XRP and XLM, the world's financial structure will experience a shift not seen since the creation of the SWIFT system in the 1970s. We're not talking about hype or speculation here. We're talking about a practical and geopolitical domino effect that could redefine how money moves globally. Let's start with what this means in real-world mechanics. If both nations officially integrate Ripple's XRP and Stellar's XLM into their cross-border settlement systems, we'll see the birth of a new financial corridor, one that operates outside Western-controlled infrastructure. Imagine a BRICS-based financial web, where value moves instantly between Shanghai, Moscow, Dubai, Johannesburg, and Sao Paulo, without touching the US dollar or going through SWIFT. This isn't just about payments, it's about power. For decades, the US dollar has been the world's gatekeeper, used as leverage in sanctions, trade negotiations, and global debt. XRP and XLM represent the rails that can bypass that gate entirely. Russia and China both understand this, and their strategies already hint at such moves. China's digital yuan (ECNY) is expanding internationally through its Belt and Road partnerships. Russia, isolated from SWIFT, is developing its SPFS system. But imagine it interconnected with RippleNet's instant liquidity model or Stellar's global stablecoin framework. When these two forces merge blockchain technology with state-backed digital assets, we'll see instant value transfers between their trade partners, and the efficiency will speak for itself. Now, let's talk about what happens to XRP and XLM prices in such a scenario. The first effect will be massive liquidity demand. XRP is designed to bridge different fiat currencies, meaning that every cross-border trade using it increases the need for XRP in global liquidity pools. Similarly, XLM's role in facilitating digital asset transfers and tokenized fiat, like CBDCs, means it becomes the invisible backbone of the new trade network. In simple terms, the more Russia and China use these systems, the more value flows through these coins. And when billions of dollars are being settled daily, the market will naturally adjust their prices to reflect their utility and demand. To put this in perspective, if even 5 to 10% of the BRICS trade volume moves through XRP or XLM rails, we could be looking at a $1 trillion liquidity shift with these coins sitting right at the center. And once liquidity demand rises, price follows utility. That's the key most people miss. But there's more: the psychological and institutional domino. When Wall Street, European banks, and Asian megacorporations see that Russia and China are transacting efficiently outside the dollar, they'll rush to build interoperable systems. Institutions don't like being left behind, especially when there's profit and influence on the line. We'll likely see a wave of neutral adoption, where Western institutions quietly begin integrating ISO 20022 compliant assets like XRP, XLM, and even XDC to stay globally connected. At that point, the crypto landscape changes forever, from speculation to infrastructure. XRP and XLM will no longer be seen as just cryptocurrencies, but as international payment utilities, recognized by banks, fintechs, and central banks alike. And what about the everyday holder, you? This is where it gets exciting. Because if you're holding these assets before this integration becomes mainstream, you're essentially holding a piece of the next financial internet. While most people chase meme coins and hype tokens, smart investors are positioning themselves in coins with real-world use cases, regulatory clarity, and institutional backing. In short, if Russia and China adopt XRP and XLM, the balance of global finance shifts eastward, the US dollar faces unprecedented competition, and early adopters of these digital rails could witness one of the largest wealth redistributions in modern history. If this scenario plays out, and the signals suggest it's already beginning, XRP and XLM won't just rise. They'll redefine what it means to hold real digital assets. So before the headlines start screaming and the charts go vertical, understand what you hold. If you found this breakdown helpful, smash that like button, drop a comment with "I'm ready for the shift," and subscribe because in the coming videos, we'll dive deep into how retail investors can strategically position themselves before the next wave of institutional adoption hits. Your future self will thank you for paying attention today.